So how's everybody doing? My name is Dave, one of the two people helping to coordinate the Preventive Controls Human Foods Roundtable work groups. We had a pretty good session with a lot of information, and I think as Chris pointed out, we just really breached upon a lot of those subject matters, and certainly would have been great to sort of extend that. But I'm going to give you just a quick little summary of that. We're going to have slides available of some of those presentations, as well as some of the takeaways. We had a bunch of polls that we did during the session. Off the top of my head, I just want to let you know that we did find out that about 35% of the people in the room were educators, 17 were PCQI lead instructors. We had about 9% were regulators in the room. So, and we had about 40-ish people in the room. So just to let you know that. Interesting stuff. All right, so first off, we went over just a little bit about the work group. Oh man, sorry about that, hold on. Technical error. I had a couple of those when we were in there, and I was all right with it. So this is our working group, and you can see that our preventive controls, we've broken out into 3 different sections: evaluation, resources, and awareness campaigns. So each one of those different sections, we're working on various topics as it relates to the preventive controls. And first thing we did actually was we talked a little bit about basically those objectives of the NECAF's commitment. Because again, there's that overarching NECAF's objective, but we as the groups also wanted to make sure that what we're doing as activities were related to those objectives. You can see up here, some of those, again, are provide necessary resources for those working groups. Transparency and collected data. So again, we're going to talk about an assessment that we did on the needs for awareness of the preventive controls. So that at some point will be available for people to utilize. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. Shared resources and results. Again, another big purpose of why we're all in the room. And again, making sure that the right people are in the room. So we talked about that as a group as a whole, and we're continuously trying to find more members to come join. At the end, I'll give you some information of how you can join in and be part of those conversations. We had to decide a little bit about our objectives and who we're going to target. So we've actually created a couple of different models here because they sort of meet the communication needs that we need to do. First and foremost, obviously small food processing facilities is the target audience, but we had to create sort of a secondary category of how we're going to actually reach them. We've labeled those to be the food safety communicators, so we sort of coined that term, if you would. And as you can see, the individuals in that group are pretty extensive. But again, these are folks who have had some training, are industry knowledgeable, and again, are having those direct contacts with those small food processors. How many of you in this room actually are food safety communicators? Nobody? I'd say pretty much everybody in this room, right? All right, so a timeline, 2019, what did we do during that time? Well, we had to decide exactly how we're going to sort of split up those resources. We just did a quick little chart here, and we broke up all those specific activities based upon the 3 working groups, and we sort of aligned those and figured out sort of some time frames. We did have to modify sort of the ongoing 2020 and 2021 timeline just to sort of account for some of the delay we had because of taking more time doing our survey and things like that. But for the most part, as we talked about with all the groups, we should be able to complete that in about a year or so, some of those objectives that we talked about. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the Preventive Control website itself on the NECAF side, only because we were figuring out that we want to make sure that we can advance partner resources a bit better, because that's obviously the purpose of NECAFs as well. Engage with those food safety communicators and very small to small processors and manufacturers a little more effectively. We talked a lot about that on the resources side because, again, we'd like to see some distinctions in how we get to that information and how we can provide that resource in a little bit more cohesive manner. And then we're going to be developing some resources and tools by targeted categories. Not going to create new stuff, but again, we're going to talk about that and look at actually existing materials, go through a process in order to evaluate and be able to put those up. And that's going to be an ongoing activity just above and beyond what's in the clearinghouse. This is going to be targeted towards those particular two subset groups that we just talked about. Quick little area. So this is where we have it today. Again, we're going to go ahead and add some subpages and start looking at ways we can differentiate that a little bit easier. Awareness and knowledge survey. So this is one of our larger activities that actually helped to define some of the activities that were happening during the last year, basically. And that needs assessment survey was created by the working groups collectively. We used Qualtrics survey, and that went through very well, worked very well. We included FSPCA lead instructors. We had the large NECAFs mailing list, so I think many of you did respond to that. And then we reached out a little bit further to FSPCA to extend that reach to all the PCQI instructors within the 13 Northeast states. Total of 103 respondents, which is pretty good. And then the survey was open between August 16th and December 31st of last year. Some of the key takeaways, responders did show evidence that there's a clear gap between understanding the FSMA preventive control rules and requirements and trainings to date. Outcome for this assessment result will be available for use, as I said, later on for some grant writing. So, no, just talking about it. Final report is going to be completed, obviously, in time to come, and then the working groups will integrate these results along with their specific areas of attention. We'll just quickly take a look at those in a moment. Glenn Bass is the FDA Deputy Director. He gave us an update on a couple areas of FSMA. Particularly, there's a couple key notes that I'm going to bring out right now. Some of the key observations between 2017 and 2019. These were areas of nonconformity, some areas of concern. Obviously, you can see here, hazard analysis, identification of hazards, sanitation controls, monitoring procedures for both sanitation as well as for allergens. And I don't think those are really any surprise to anybody. One of the areas that he did bring up, and I think it was a topic of conversation that really could have probably taken a lot more time, was the fact that we talked about the modified qualifications for folks, and they can actually go through an attestation process in order to become exempt from some of the requirements. Again, the purpose of our working groups is to sort of approach and make sure that all facilities have some guidance and some direction and adherence to Part 117. But again, there are areas in which that were brought up by Glenn that they can actually go through various forms. I'll bring up a slide just to show you an example of what he was talking about. But this is a clear example of some folks that potentially could, that's 17,000, that could go through the modification process. So I thought that was a really interesting topic, more that we're going to probably bring about with that. And Glenn, are you in the room? Might have left already, so. We will keep a full set of slides up, so those will be available so you guys can take a look at those as well. This is how you go about submitting that attestation through the system, and there's a couple of ways to actually qualify for that. Again, this is the information we were talking about. We were talking about, I think New York has been looking a lot at this and how to integrate that within their own states. So I think that link in between what's happening on the federal side and state side, we just touched upon that only. So, and I thought that was a really key observation during that time. Bill Lachowski joined us from Rutgers Food Innovation Center and gave us a fabulous presentation on FSPCA updates. Everybody was really excited, I got to tell you, so it's great. Thanks. No, Bill, thank you very much. The key thing that Bill really wanted us to take away from this, and I think it was one of the best things to learn, was what's happening with the PCQI certifications. What's that trend line telling you? It's going down. So, and again, we were talking about maybe the reasons for that. Have we reached a saturation point? Are we reaching the right people? Are there others providing courses that are similar but not underneath the FSPCA guides? Who knows, right? There's a lot of questions that came about. But interesting update on that. We also have some great slides, which you guys have access to, about how many are happening within the US and how many are happening internationally, those certifications, how many leader instructors, so really good information. Working group updates. So we quickly went over each of the working groups, awareness campaign. One of the areas that we talked about with them is, again, is going to be, we completed that awareness survey, and the key purpose of that was to determine is there a gap and is there a need for awareness of the preventive control rules? And I think unanimously everyone that took the survey did say that there is a need. And I think everybody in the group, room, if I remember correctly, 85% strongly agreed that the results were correct, and another 14%, basically 86 and 14, did say that they were also agreeing upon that. So pretty much people felt as though it was valuable, and again, drives a lot of the next sort of leads into the next conversations. So the Awareness Communication Portfolio Toolkit is going to be part of that stage 2 process, and as you can see up there, it's going to include some easy readable material. And I think that was one of the key points that I took away was how do we make it able to be understood by all and be able to be implemented a little bit easier. So we're going to be taking a look at that, and again, obviously expand our database for outreach to increase access to food safety communicators, as well as those processors will happen. Amanda, do you have anything else quickly? Luke? Super. Evaluations. So evaluation also was taking a look at that survey because we had a couple questions to take a look at the actual PC course and sort of get people's take on what's the value to them and are they actually putting that into practice. Again, the survey found support for the tool, yes. Next steps are going to be develop draft of an evaluation tool for a pre-course, evaluation type of technique, post-course, and then some follow-up potentially a year, 2 years later to really see how people are actually utilizing that information. And then the last group is resources, and one of the key activities for the resources group was to begin looking at what are those resources out in the marketplace, and there is so much out there. And what I can tell you about that is that there needed to be a way of categorizing, and that was the first step that they were trying to look at, is how do we best categorize some of that information to make it a little more legible. Again, this is the definitions and category list that they currently have, still in development, but I think it's a great working start for the group, as well as being able to decipher how we're going to sort of take that information and plug them into those various categories. Challenged. Give me a second. How are we going to go ahead and evaluate that? So a rubric was developed actually by UMass students, and again, that was adopted and going to be modified a bit in order to account for how do we actually make sure that we just put on the stuff that might be relevant for those particular groups. Again, this is sort of the way that that process is going to happen. We're still in the phase of trying to capture some of the tools that we needed. One of the questions we asked again in the group, we'd like to ask everybody at probably some time as well, what are some of those tools in the workplace right now, on-site, online, wherever it might be. Because again, the more we can get, then we can start really evaluating what's the breadth of what we have, and then do some gap analysis and figure out where are those holes in those categories. Beth, do you have anything to say? You good? Okay. Again, this is our approach. Again, identify and pool resources, review and finalize list of pool resources. So we're still working on that. So we're a little bit behind on that, still capturing that data. Again, we're going to follow through the rest of that approach, final review, do some electronic publication, also do a single page sheet we were talking about, again, for maybe those who might need that information and don't particularly have always that access to electronic means. Last but not least, we did an open mic, and we had a couple folks from various areas of the Northeast come up and give some quick presentations. Again, we had Carrie from Penn State, who was talking about food systems on raw milk, resource gaps. So these are some studies and work that they're doing there. Mary from New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire, working with food processors there, basic and cleaning and sanitation work, providing a two-day course on CGMPs and the FDA regulations. Amanda and Jill at UMass provided some updates on a couple different projects. One was the Canyon Open Access with SOPs. Let me make sure I got this right. Development and value-added and frozen produce and food safety outreach. Sound good? Great. Again, we have some of these updates later on as well, so we'll put these into report you guys get. Bruno from Cornell, he was providing some updates on some preventive control rules with hard to reach communities, so he gave us sort of an update on that as well. We also heard about another group, which is the Google Food Safety Group, so we were talking about that a little bit more as well. So Kathy Davies, I think you were part of that conversation, right? So cool.
Yeah. I was at the Network for Incubator and Commercial Kitchen Conference in Austin in October, and I was on a food safety panel, and coming out of that, I started a food safety group on Google for people who manage the shared kitchens so that they can get things in place to help their clients, and it'd be a way to reach their clients. So if anyone's interested in being on that group, contact me.
Thank you very much. And with those open mic sessions, we'll include the people and their email addresses, so if you do want to get involved or find out more, you can contact them directly. If you are interested, and we would love to have more people get involved with every single working group, here is a list of those folks that are actually leading the charge in the various work groups. Beth Demings, Amanda Kinsha, Luke Bordeaux, we got Nicole Richards as well. So, and again, you can see their stuff, and we'll give you that all later on. So thank you very much. Yeah.